I can barely walk, so what better time to sit down and talk about the second entry in Malazan Book of the Fallen, Deadhouse Gates. There's quite a few gates, a couple houses, and a whole lot of dead, and just like the strenuous leg day that I just did, this book was brutal, but at the same time, extremely rewarding in what it presented. My god, this book puts you through your emotional paces and holds nothing back when discussing the material presented. Now, before we get into the review, like and subscribe as always, and let's get on with this. You get a pretty much completely new cast of characters, except for a couple carryovers from the last book. You have Kalam, Fiddler, Apsalar, and Crocus. These help you kind of situate within the new world as you're thrown completely new people for the majority of the book. You have Felisin, Heboric, and Dukir. Those are your main follows besides the characters from the last book. And pretty much this book revolves around the whirlwind and the revolution in the Seven Cities. This is a really bold choice to start multiple plot lines within separate books. Most books start them within the same book. Like you can take a Way of Kings where you have Shallan in one place and Kaladin in another, and Dalinar is also there, to where you have a safety net of if one plotline is not hitting, you can fall back on another. But no, when you do it in separate books, you have to do it right because any connection you establish with one character is gone from one book to the next. And this is a very bold choice, and I think it worked out. But just like the last book, I had trouble starting up. There's so much information thrown at you. The beginnings of the books are hard to get through, but once you kind of get a pace and you kind of get situated of where you are and what is happening, it starts flowing. I mean, a complaint I kind of had with last book was not kind of knowing where anything was, and that was extrapolated to the extremes in this book. Yes, they have maps, but it is just so cluttered for my taste. For me, I just kind of had to be okay with not knowing where the hell anybody was. Rarakaru, or whatever that main desert was, everybody kind of ended up in it at one point or another, and I had no idea the distance from maybe the start of the chain of the dogs, or where Felisin and Heboric were put in jail. Like, I was just like, okay, you know what? Whatever. People got here and I'm fine with it. That's a nitpick on my part, but for me, the clutter of the map and the world and not knowing where people are was kind of a bit off-putting. Now, I wouldn't say this is grimdark, but it is very much dark in tone and takes itself seriously, but it doesn't revel in it. What I love so much, especially with the Dukir perspective, was getting the view of not from a hardened soldier, but from a historian, and seeing it not from Coltane's perspective as the genius commander, but from a bystander who's there to record it. It was a unique perspective to view something as horrible as the chain of dogs through, and I thought that was a very interesting read in the way it was presented, and I love how it just lays it out in front of you. There's no skewing of perspective, there's no glorification. This is the situation, these are the horrors. Take it as you will with your interpretation. And this could have been handled very badly, especially with what happens to Felisin, but I think that it's presented in a way where you interpret it in how you want to interpret it, and there is no glorification or justification in actions that people take. And I thought that was very well handled, but something that wasn't so well handled was there's a lot of convenience, like the Talon Amash ship, and then the big ass Talon dragon, and then Heboric finally just like randomly getting super strength. There was just a bunch of instances where it was like, okay, I guess so. This is cool, so I'll go along with it, but it feels very, very convenient to the plot that this is happening right now. So that was a bit of a nitpick when it'd be like, dire situation. Don't worry about it. Coltane got Uber Eats when he needed it the most from Darujistan. I think I got that pronunciation right. It was just like, all right, I accept it. Just like the map thing, this is the way things are going to be, and it's not my total preference in what I like in a book. I have to reiterate, the humor is as always great. I love the soldier humor, especially with that group of sailors that we come across, and it just works well and does not undercut the dark tones that pervade the whole book. And let's get into the characters and what happened. Unlike last review, I'm just going to go by groups of characters, not in plot sequential order, and just talk about things that I noticed, starting with Felisin and Heboric. I love the toxic relationship, and then Bauden is also thrown in the mix. It just works so well. It could have just been bratty pissing at each other, but like because of the dire situation, it's a coping mechanism between all of them. Seeing Heboric's lost faith, but like he's still blessed. Felisin going through these horrendous things, but still wanting revenge upon her sister, and how she falls into drug addiction and reliance on that one slave within the prison camp, and then Bodden, who just has ulterior motives that you don't know of till the end, and it's too late, and Felisin realizes she lost somebody she should have cared about. I love the toxicity. I just reveled in it. Every time they bitched at each other, I was like, more. Yes, you should not be good buddy buddies in this situation. You should hate what's happening. Yeah, it's illogical. You should work together, but more. Okay, maybe that's just bad, but I feel like that's a realistic take on when you are going through these horrors. You're not going to be hunky dory. Let's go, guys. We need to get this together. You're going to be like, I fucking hate my life at this moment. It's kind of insane to see how brutal this journey is in a book that has the chain of dogs and what Dukier and Coltane go through. It's wild how in one book there can be two different journeys that both go to the depths of humanity and struggle. And as another side note on Felisin's attitude, I like how she's a 15-year-old that acts like a 15-year-old. Yes, she is hardened by her experiences, but at the same time, she is what she is and does not just magically mature. I do think her transformation into Shaik was handled well until the moments when she started embodying the goddess. It felt very abrupt, and there was no learning curve. There was no even opening the book. It was just like, okay, I have all this knowledge. Let's just run with it. Going from Felisin, who I believe was the correct vessel, over Apsalar. And she just started at like 75% instead of ramping up to it. And I wish we'd gotten more of her understanding what's going on instead of just being like, boom, I have all the knowledge I need. Let's get on with it. But another favorite character of mine was Heboric. Oh my god, this man has no faith in himself, so he just tries to do one last good thing in his life and save Felisin. He puts all his stock into trying to preserve her, even when he is just fed up with her bullshit, understandably so. And along that plot line, what is that big ass jade finger? And Fenner, like, oh my god. I have to give praise to Steven Erikson for just making everything interesting and me wanting to go along all these side paths. It's like when I'm playing a video game, it's like, what's this side quest? What's this marker over here? I want to explore everything. And then it's just a drop in the bucket. And then Hebor gains some more powers. And then he has three things fighting within him. And now his ghost hands. Like, there's no explanation. But I assume there will be in the future, but it's held off from you, and all you want to do is understand. It's frustrating, but also very intriguing at the same time. I really did want more from Bodden and Culp, and they just got slaughtered by the rats and the fire, and I felt like that was cutting it a bit short, and then hitting those deaths like back to back within like 5 pages was like, okay, I feel like you wasted a bit of an emotional intensity there by just making it so abrupt after all of the survival that they went through. Now let's move on to the chain of dogs, starting with Coltane, who I really liked, and just like Animander Rank, you don't get in his head, and I enjoy that outside perspective, but I do wish we'd gotten more Genius Commander. It felt like he was just dragging them through it as best as he could, but there was no just ingenious moments throughout it. It was just scraping by, especially in those moments like when the refugees rushed the line, like that saved his ass. I just wanted a little bit more ingenuity out of that character, but something that was handled greatly was the goddamn nobles. If you give me nobles to hate in your book, you already got me on your side. Just these arrogant fools that want their way because they're entitled. Like, it's such an easy target to put in, and it works every time for me. And then the through line to the end, to where they spread the drama about Coltane and how he was horrible, and the lies because Dukier is not there to tell the truth. Like, it just seethes within me, but it is so perfect at drawing out emotion. If you ever want me to get to hate somebody, just make them an arrogant noble. That is the 10 out of 10 way to make a hateable character. But characters that weren't hateable were these soldiers, both the Wiccans and the 7th. You had List, you had Lull, you had Sormo, and you had Bolt. All of them, even the dogs, had personality there. And to kill them all off was just like, damn, really drove home the point that the struggle through the chain of dogs was all through honor and through duty that they had to the Malazan Empire, despite being conquered by them. They respected what they needed to do and save those refugees, and just to get shit talked after death is, god damn it, I hate nobles. But moving on from that, I do wish that Dukir or Coltane had had more finality in their deaths. Bringing one back in the way is all right, but both of them, I love those characters, but if you're going to bring them both back, just don't kill one. I think Dukir surviving would have worked a little bit better, especially to get his story out. Like, as much as I like that anger that seized within me from Coltane getting shit talked, I wish that it hadn't been a double revival. Now, people in the comments have told me that like souls aren't super attached to the bodies in this world, but it does feel like a bit gimmicky. And moving on to but it does feel a bit gimmicky. And as I'm talking about Coltane's death, that soldier that shot him in the head with an arrow, I feel like I should know him, and I feel like I will know him, and it just adds to the reread potential. We're like, oh, look at that guy. I forgot he appeared in book 2. And like just the presence in the page that he was given, it's like, I'm supposed to know this dude, aren't I? And then I feel like that's just a future character that we will see. But now we have our 3rd/4th plotline. I'm going to combine Icarium and Mappo along with Fiddler, Apsalar, and Crocus. And I was a bit disappointed in those latter's journey. It felt like they were just kind of wandering. But something I was not disappointed in was Icarium and Mappo. I love that friendship, and having your friend who's essentially like Stalin or Hitler, but he forgot his memory and now he's like a really cool guy. Like, what a weird dichotomy and a dynamic that just works so well. And one of my favorites, if not my favorite scene in the book, was the Jag Don't Cry scene where Mappo is in tears, Icarium is in tears, and Apsalar is just like sitting there like trying to comfort him, I guess. And like, oh my god, I read that scene, I was like, damn, I did not expect that out of these two, who's not really given a bunch of page time, but just the fatalism in Icarium's fate, either to kill a bunch of people or die himself. And then Mappo, who like forgot his duty essentially, well, not forgot his duty, but realized his love for his friend is more important than the duty given to him by the Nameless Ones, who slaughtered his village, we find out. Also, who the hell are the Nameless Ones? That's a question for future books. But as I said, the Fiddler, Crocus, Apsalar plot felt a bit directionless, especially when Apsalar just wandered off with her father, and then they reunited. It's like, okay, I guess he just wanted to chit-chat and have some alone time, and then there needed to be something to replace becoming Shaik for Apsalar, because that was set up, and then there wasn't really a replacement. Yeah, they went to the Azath house. Yeah, they went to the Azath house, but it didn't feel like they really did anything. And then they just split up at the end and go back to a fishing village. Like, I know she's coming back. There's no way that an assassin incarnate just doesn't go and kill people. It's in your nature. But I just was a little disappointed. But I did love the character work for both Apsalar and Fiddler, but it did feel like Crocus got left in the dust. He essentially only got character work. It's like he's now holding his knives with more purpose. That's all we really got out of him. Yet again, I love sappers. Just blowing shit up in the face of magic. Fiddler works so well. But back to the final plotline, of which I really did enjoy. Kalam, the one-man army with a heart of gold. He starts the whirlwind and he starts the apocalypse, but he doesn't really seem to want it. Yes, he's a 7 cities native, and he needs this to upset the Empress's power and try to create some commotion, but he ends up mostly going against the grain and not trying to be a supporter of the whirlwind, and I don't think he really wants it to happen. It just serves his purpose. So I wish that had been explored a bit more. Maybe he regrets starting it and doesn't think it's worth it. It just felt like he dropped off despite being adverse to the whirlwind's efforts to take over the 7 cities. Another instance where I was just laughing was when Shaik got quick scoped by a crossbow, and then the guards were just sitting there like, oh, fuck. Guess our revolution's kind of over. But moving on to something that was not as great was the Kalam romance. That felt super abrupt, and that lady essentially didn't like him, but liked him. Those are some of my least favorite, where they're like, oh, I'm so frustrated with you. I love you. And also it did a disservice to Kalam's true wife, Aptorian, who was by his side throughout the whole book, saving his ass. Date the devil, Kalam. date the devil. The real woman is tricking you. But anyways, the ending was extremely wild, and I loved the politics and the conniving from the Empress. She kind of got shit on through this book, like lost a whole entire like part of a continent, 6 out of 7 cities, but then to show that she's still a formidable adversary at the end. And Kalam being smart, instead of just being like, I have my noble mission, be like, no, your points are valid. I'm out of here. And then comes High House of Shadow and fucks his life up. I want a family and I want to settle down. Yeah, here's a bunch of demon children. Good luck, dude. Kind of feel bad for him. He got the short end of the stick. Something I really didn't like is how trusting he was of that one dude on the boat. It was like, okay, like there's this one shifty dude, and then you're gonna just be like, something's up here. But this shifty dude, I don't really think it's him. That also felt a bit convenient for the plot, but I really did like the crazy captain and then the ships crashing. That was super cool sequence. And yet again, Steven Erikson hits it out of the park with the depth of the story and the intrigue within what is happening. We also learn in this book that Dancer and Calandvid, whatever, the last emperor, I don't know how to say his name, ascended and became Shadow Throne and Cotillion. I kind of suspected something like this from the hints at the last book, but I'm very intrigued to see what part they play. They took a heavy hand in this book, and I like the gods being involved. I like them being vulnerable. I like them having intrigue within the story instead of just being all-powerful beings. But anyways, Deadhouse Gates. I'm not necessarily sure I liked it more than Gardens of the Moon, but I certainly did not like it less. They had similar structure issues with me, like a slow, heavy start and a dynamic finish, but I did think Deadhouse Gates carried the middle a bit better. Overall, I'm yet again intrigued and hoping as I go through these books, the beginnings pick up a bit more for me as I learn the characters and learn what the hell is happening, because I am struggling when it's that beginning and they're just throwing a bunch of new stuff at you and you're like, do I have to keep all of this in my head for the next 800 pages? Anyways, like and subscribe.